All right, so we're going to get started because I know, just like everyone else, you are very busy and we want to respect your time. Welcome to our first ever Checkology office hours. I'm excited to be joined by my colleagues Kim and Jordan, who you see at the very top. They will introduce themselves in a few minutes, but basically, office hours will take place every Thursday, the last Thursday of the month, where we will talk about either new updates to the platform, high interest topics or resources we have to share with educators, or even repeat questions that we get from you all through Zendesk on Checkology to be answered during office hours. So we want to welcome you. We plan about 30 minutes with some time at the end to ask questions. If you have other questions, you can always put them in the Q&A, or you can put them in the side chat box, and Kim will jot those down, and we will make sure Jordan knows so she can answer those during the broadcast here. If it's something specific to your account or something that may take a little bit longer, make sure you drop in your email as well. That way we can get back to you and Kim can set up a time, or Jordan can set up a time to meet with you individually and make sure that you are maximizing the use of Checkology. So welcome. Again, I'm Shaylin Farnsworth, and I reside in Iowa. That's right, a little hidden gem. I was known for corn, cows, and computers. But today I'm joined, like I said, by my colleagues, Kim Bowen and Jordan. So I'm going to pass this over to Kim, and then we'll have Jordan introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Bowman, and I'm coming to you from Richmond, Virginia. And I'm the User Success Associate at News Literacy Project. Jordan, take it away.
Thanks, Kim. I'm Jordan. I've been with NLP since Checkology was a baby. It was just a lesson of news literacy lessons, just a list of news literacy lessons. And I've been lucky enough to be a part of the team that's overseen its development since that point.
Wonderful, and that's right. I'm Shaylin Farnsworth from Iowa, and I'm the National Director of Educator Outreach and Success. So we make up this EOS team. Along with Checkology, we do have a few more resources, and throughout this broadcast, Kim will be dropping in links as Jordan speaks to kind of give you access to the resources. But of course, we have Checkology, and that is 13 plus lessons on a digital platform for you to explore and use with your students in the classroom. We also have the SIFT, which comes out every Monday. It's a newsletter that takes high interest things going on in the news and explains them in a way that you can use in your own classroom. We have in-person web-based webinars, professional development, and last but not least, also an educator resource section that we just started this year on the website. Again, all of those things Kim will share with you in the chat. And there was a question, what's the difference between the Q&A and the chat? The chat is just more real time. If there's a question asked, or if you want to pose a question in there, something maybe Jordan's demoing, you can definitely do that. The Q&A is just a way for you to write down questions that will be asked at the end to be shared. So let's jump right to it. And Jordan, let's talk about the agenda. What is our focus today?
Sorry, I had to get the unmute button. There we are. So our agenda today first is to talk a little bit about what Checkology is in general, if you haven't used it before. Then we'll go over a quick overview of registering for an account and setting up a class, which is much easier this year than it's ever been. And our focus today is using Checkology in a remote or a hybrid learning environment. And we decided to focus on this because a lot of the questions that we've been getting from users this year have been about things like shifting rosters, like students coming in late, not being able to see student reactions to content in class, and then wanting to change your course later, etc. So we wanted to point out a couple of features and settings that's going to make your life easier this year using Checkology. But first, we'd like to push out a little poll for you to take. So we're curious if you've used Checkology before, so we can kind of tailor this presentation to make sure you're getting what you need.
Fantastic. So I'm going to share these results, Jordan, for everyone there.
Thank you. So it looks like about half of us are new and are excited to try Checkology, and half of us are getting used to the platform still. So this is perfect. I'm going to do a quick overview of what Checkology is, and then we will jump right in. All right, so the Checkology virtual classroom has been around since 2016. Like I said, back in 2016, it was a list of news literacy lessons that you could use to integrate into your classroom. Since then, it has become a full-fledged e-learning platform. It is totally browser-based, so you don't need to download anything, and it's also totally free. So you and your students and even your administrators can get set up with accounts for free on Checkology. In addition to 13 core news literacy lessons, it offers dozens of pieces of enrichment, like exercises and challenges that students can do, as well as a directory of journalists that you can invite to speak to your classroom, a digital verification sandbox where you can practice fact-checking skills, and even more. If you head to checkology.org, you can find the answers to a lot of your questions there. So if you're on checkology.org before you've logged in or created an account, if you head to the What is Checkology tab, that's where you can find information about the enrichment activities on Checkology. You can also find links to the standards alignments for many states in the United States, as well as the Common Core. If you switch over to the Student Impact tab, you can find some details from our previous year's student data that we collect from platform pre-assessments and post-assessments. And you can also find stories about how Checkology has affected students all over the country. And finally, in the Start Learning tab, you can preview lessons. You'll notice that under each lesson, there's a demarcation of whether it's for education or for everyone. Last week, we debuted a version of the Checkology virtual classroom that can be used by members of the general public. So if you know someone who's not working in an educational setting, but still wants to learn about news literacy, they can also sign up for an account for Checkology for independent learners that allows them to go through modified versions of these lessons on their own without having to submit their work to any educators. So I'm going to hop out of this PowerPoint presentation and switch over to checkology.org. Kim, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Thank you. All right, so to create an account, all I need is an email address. I'll click Register Now on the top right, and I'll find the Educators option on the left side, and that Register Now button. Now I just need to find my school. Most schools in the United States should be listed here on this screen. I'm going to join the school that we've established for the News Literacy Project, but you should be able to find your school here. If you don't, at the bottom of this Choose Your School list, you will see an option to submit. Where did it go? There it is, to submit your school. So you're welcome to do that, and Kim and I will get back to you within 2 business days once you've submitted your school. I'll click Next. And here I'm asked to confirm my school administrators. If you don't see anyone listed here, that just means that no one at your school or your district has reached out to NLP to become an administrator for your school. It's no big deal. Here I've created an admin account for myself for the News Literacy Project. So I'm going to acknowledge that I myself have access to all aggregated student data about progress on lessons, challenges, etc. Administrators within districts and schools don't have access to any student identifying information. And finally, I create my account. The fastest way to do this is probably to link your account to Google or Clever. That just requires 1 click, and then your account is created. But I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way. I'm going to sign up using my email address. So here I'll enter any email address. It's important to note that this doesn't need to be your official school email address. It can be anything. It's the email address that you'd like to receive communications about Checkology from.
And while you're doing this, Jordan, there is a question, so I think we'll bring this up now. It asks, is a school administrator or a principal, et cetera, or is it whoever is overseeing Checkology?
Got it. It's really whatever the school or the district reaches out to us and sets up. So anyone in your school or district can contact us for a no-cost partnership in which we provide resources for you to maximize your Checkology usage. And that person, as long as we verify that their identity matches the administrator at the school, they become the administrator at the school. Shaylin, if you'd like to talk about no-cost partnerships, that I think now would be a great time.
For sure. So as we introduced at the very beginning, and I'll turn on my camera, we have a small team, but we're growing, and we want to partner with districts who want to use Checkology in both the middle school and high school levels. So these resources are not in elementary, unfortunately, quite yet, but middle school, high school, and you have a contact here. Kim dropped that document, but you can contact us. It'll be funneled to me where I can set up a time to meet with you and your administrator. And so Catherine did ask, do we need to set ourselves up as administrator or reach out? You do need to reach out so we can find if it's a school level or a district level. But, you know, with those partnerships, which are also free, there comes support for onboarding, support with usage, professional learning, planning meetings, so a lot of benefits. But to set up on the administration side to either see a school, let's say you're a teacher leader of or a curriculum department chair and you want to see your school, or if you're at the district level and you're going to implement it across buildings in your district, both of those two types of accounts need to be created by Kim Jordan or myself. So you can always reach out to us and we'll help you get started. Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Shaylin. So I've logged into my newly created teacher account, and this is what I see. This is my dashboard. And for this presentation, we're just going to do the quickest possible class setup. But if you need any assistance getting started when you're setting up your own classes, please check out this help button on the bottom right. Here you can watch a video tutorial of how to set up a class. You can read an article about the same thing. You can take a tour of your account, and you can get to our help center, which is where you can reach out directly to Kim via chat, call, or email using the submit a request button on the top right, or a help button that should pop up here on the bottom right. And you can also search for help center articles that pertain to exactly what you're looking for. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we'll just do a real quick class setup. I can click on any of these add class buttons in the center, and I give my class a title. Let's say that this is social studies second period. So I'll call this social studies 2. Select my type of student, and you can learn more about this and learn why by hovering over the question mark on the top right. And I will determine whether or not to turn my course lock on or off. This can always be changed throughout your use of Checkology with each class. The course lock on means that students have to complete their Checkology assignments in order. And if it's off, it means they can complete their Checkology assignments in any order. So for flexibility right now, I'm going to turn off the course lock and create my class. And now I can choose to either register my students or assign a course. First, I'm going to register my students. And by far the easiest way to do this is with a student self-registration link. You'll see here that students who register themselves can link their accounts to Google, Clever, and Schoology, which makes it easier for them to log in because they don't have to remember an extra set of credentials. And it's also easier for you because all you have to do is click this purple box on the bottom left, send this link to your students in a message or an email. And then when your student clicks the link, they'll have really similar options that you did when you created your account. So I'm going to sign up for this student account using the old-fashioned way again. You'll see that this section code or a class code is already filled out. So that means that the student is joining your class. And let's see, I'll call this student Checkology. I will assign them a safe password. And I will not assign them an email address. You'll note that email addresses are always optional for students on Checkology. We aim to collect as little data about students as possible, and you can learn more about that in our privacy policy and our terms of use on the site. So now I've got my student account. For now, I'm going to skip a tour and log out so I can keep showing you what this looks like from the teacher perspective. Log back in as that student's teacher. Opt in to receive the SIFT, which you should all do. And now I see this class tile on my classes area. I can edit my class settings or I can manage my students. And you'll see that Checkology is already listed as a student. So we've created the class, we've added students, and now it's time to assign a course. Here I'm on my course module. And you can see that I was already served a default course, Checkology 101. This is a collection of assignments that the News Literacy Project deems kind of basic news literacy essentials. In order to save time, I'm just going to click Assign to Class, and we'll go over customizing that later. All right, so now I've got my class ready. The students can keep joining using that join link, and I can click View Edit Course to learn more about what I've assigned to my students. So now that I've created my Checkology account, I've set up a class, I've added students, and I've assigned a course, I want to talk about some functions that will allow, that will make your Checkology usage even more user-friendly in a remote or a hybrid learning environment. So the first thing I'd like to talk about are the class settings. When we set up our class, we only dealt with the basic class settings. But if I open advanced settings, then I can see some things that will make my use of Checkology even easier. The first one that I'd like to talk about is one-to-many lesson mode. You can get a summary of this by hovering over the question mark on the top right. And when you turn it on, you'll see a list of lessons. So in one-to-many lesson mode, you can use a lesson one-to-many with students either in person or via screen share, and only your device will need to stream the lesson video. So most Checkology videos most Checkology lessons are hosted by a subject matter expert who takes students through the news literacy concept. And you don't necessarily want every single student in your class to be loading their video on their own machines while they're going through Checkology, because that takes up network bandwidth, it could cause confusion, etc. So if you're in one-to-many lesson mode, and I'll enable it for these two lessons, then your student, instead of being prompted to watch the video on their screen, which again uses network bandwidth, they will be prompted, let's see. Oh, this is actually a great learning moment. So now that I've created the student account, I need to figure out what the username is so that I can log in. This is another frequent request that we get from educators. My student created an account, but they don't know their username. So to find that username, I'm going to click Manage next to my students. Click on that student's name, and I see that their username is Checkology1. So now I can log in as the student and show you what one-to-many lesson mode is going to look like. Oh no, okay, well, in order to save time, I'll just tell you what one-to-many lesson mode looks like. Whenever a student gets to that video in their account, then they're just going to see a purple screen that says you're watching this in class. They'll then be able to click past that screen and get right to the assessment questions so that they can answer those questions alongside you live. Another setting that I would love to discuss in advanced settings here on the right-hand side are co-teachers. If any of your colleagues have joined your organization on Checkology, which they can do during the registration process, then they'll be listed here under your potential co-teachers. You'll see that in LP, I have Kim as an option. I have Shaylin. And if I add them and I save the class, then when Kim and Shaylin log into their teacher accounts, they'll also have Social Studies 2 class tiles on their dashboards. And then they'll be able to evaluate student work. They'll be able to edit the course that the students are working on, and they'll be able to add students as well. So in a constantly evolving learning environment, this is really useful to have. If someone's out sick for a certain period of time, or if you just have really large classes and you need assistance evaluating work, have your teacher join Checkology and then assign them as a co-teacher to your class. All right, another Checkology feature that I'm really happy about this year is the ability to completely edit a course at any time. This was not available during previous years of Checkology. You kind of had to create a course and then stick with it. But now at any point during your Checkology usage, you can add lessons, remove lessons, you can rearrange them, and student progress will be saved. I'm going to click Customize this course underneath the course, and then I get a warning. This is a Checkology quirk, basically just telling you that you are editing a class that's been assigned to, editing a course that's been assigned to multiple classes, and then I have to give it another name. So let's call this Checkology 101 edited. And then I'm taken to the course builder. On the left, you'll see the content library. You can also access the content library here on your top navigation. The version in the top navigation is meant to just give you an area where you can learn about what's on Checkology without having to assign it to students. But if you're ready to assign it, here in the course builder, I can find all of the core news literacy lessons, all 13 of them, here on the left-hand side in pink. Exercises, which replicate assessments that students encounter in lessons, here in green on the left, and challenges which build on skills that students learn in lessons on this in this drawer as well. And fact-checking missions, finally, which gives students a real-world piece of information, often from social media, and ask them to use their fact-checking skills that they learn about in the Check Center in order to get to the bottom of a piece of information and determine whether it's legitimate. So in order to edit my course, I just need to manipulate the items here on the right-hand side. I can delete a lesson. I can rearrange content. And I can add content. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Kim.
I just wanted to pop in. When you click the X button, it just moves it back to the content library. So if you change your mind, if you get rid of like misinformation lesson, but then you change your mind and you want it back, you just go back over to the content library and it'll be there.
Awesome, thank you, Kim. And if you are working with misinformation and you delete the lesson, but a couple of students have already completed it, those students will retain their points. You won't be able to access their answers to that lesson anymore, but they will retain their points. And then if you decide to add misinformation back into the course later, you'll be able to access that student's work again. So your course auto saves as you're building it. You can confirm that everything's looking right by scrolling down here and making sure that the button is green and it says changes saved. And this will be automatically reflected in my course. So my students will immediately see those changes to the course. And I can confirm that this is the case by clicking View Edit Course again. And it looks like misinformation, the lesson itself, is no longer there. So that course saved appropriately. So editing a course this year is super flexible. If you have any questions about course editing, we've got an entire section for it in our Help Center. Under For Educators, Assigning a Course, and then you can scroll down to Editing a Course. All right, so now that we've gone over editing a course, I wanted to talk about some frequent questions that we've had from educators this year. A big one has been troubleshooting video issues. Since many of you are working with students in a remote or hybrid learning environment, they might be using devices or networks that you don't know about, and they might be experiencing a variety of different issues with video. So I'm going to manage this student and change their password to see if I can log in as them again one more time. And then I will show you some options that they have from their accounts so that they don't always have to contact you for help with videos every time. Fingers crossed. There we are. So you'll notice that when a student logs in for the first time, they'll be prompted to write down their username. We just went over how to find your student's username if they ask you for it. There's also resources for that in the Help Center. But if I'm a student and I'm watching a video and there's something wrong with it, maybe it's not loading or I'm getting an error message, then I can click the Help button on the bottom right. And I click View the Student Frequently Asked Questions. And here I can find information guiding me towards my username and my password. I can scroll directly to video issues. And I can see if I can figure out which of these video issues is mine and then try the solution. So a solution for this is often to clear your browser cache or use a new browser, which we'll talk about shortly. Something that you can control on your end as a teacher without having to work directly with your student through all of these troubleshooting issues is the video preference that you're using. So Checkology video streams via 3 services: YouTube, Vimeo, and Wistia. And students using Chromebooks or who are signed into their browser with their Google account, they often have issues with video permissions and aren't able to watch videos that are streaming through YouTube. So we recommend that if you encounter any video errors, the first thing you do is you change your video preference by clicking your avatar on the top right, clicking Manage Account, and then clicking Video Preference. Vimeo and Wistia seem to reliably work in all sorts of networks. I'm going to switch to Wistia and click Submit. And this will be applied then to all of my classes. I mentioned earlier wanting to use a browser with a cleared cache and that is up to date. We found that clearing a browser's cache or browsing history tends to solve most issues that students encounter on Checkology. Our recommendation for the best way to do that, since students are working with all sorts of browsers, is just to Google the words clear cache and then the title of the browser. But we also have resources for this on our Help Center if you'd like us to send you any advice directly for clearing your browser cache. So another video related issue, sorry, I'm having some navigation issues up here. Another video related issue that we frequently see is that students need assistance with video because the subject matter expert in the video is speaking too quickly, or they simply need extra support understanding what the subject matter expert is saying. There are two things that really help with this aspect of video. One of those is turning on the captions from within a video. So I'm going to show you this from a teacher account, but students can do the same thing. If you or they click into a lesson, which I'll do by clicking preview here, and they come across a screen that has video, they should see a caption option in the bottom right of every single screen. This is true on YouTube, Vimeo, and Wistia. If this is not the case for a particular video, please get in touch with us and let us know so that we can remedy that. And then students will be able to see exactly what the subject matter experts are saying. Another resource that is available in both an educator and a student account are video captions. So students and teachers both click on the resources tab on the top. They scroll to lesson transcripts here on the left-hand side, or they can simply select the title of the lesson that they're working on and filter from there. And then they download a PDF of the transcript of the lesson. Another resource related to the transcript are our full lesson guides, and you can find these here in your help button. So I'll click on lesson guides. And then I'll click into a lesson. Let's say I'm working on the First Amendment. I can find all sorts of resources here as an educator. I can have a link to directly preview the lesson before I assign it to students. I can learn about state standards alignments, essential questions, the lesson duration, etc. in the lesson overview. And I can see every single element of the lesson itself and correct answers to all of the assessments in the full lesson guide. So you're welcome to take this information from the full lesson guide and adapt it for use directly with students to provide them additional supports if you'd like to. Just keep in mind that the correct answers to all assessments are highlighted in this particular document. And you'll see summaries of each of the lesson videos on the left or right-hand side of the video transcript as well. All right, so those are some settings that make Checkology much easier to use in a remote or a hybrid learning environment. There's one piece of functionality that I'd also like to go over with you, something that we're still really excited about at NLP, and that is our journalist directory. When NLP was founded in 2008, from that period of time until somewhat recently, there was a classroom program in which journalists would come to physical classrooms and give news literacy lessons and have conversations with students. The program was extremely popular, and we wanted to scale it so that it could be applicable to anyone using Checkology. So we created the journalist directory on Checkology. In this directory, you'll find over 100 journalists who are excited to share their expertise with you and their students, with you and your students, excuse me. And you can search by zip code if you're interested in an in-person visit. And you can filter by the journalist's expertise and the languages that they speak. So let's say I'm curious about the upcoming presidential election, and I'd like to talk to a journalist about how they are covering the election. I can click covering national politics, perhaps covering local politics as well, and click go. It looks like 60 journalists were found, so you might need to filter down your search a bit more. But I'll click into a journalist profile and show you the information that's available here. So you can learn about their work experience, their areas of expertise, take a look at the work that they've completed. And then if you decide to invite them to your class, then you click invite the person on the right-hand side. You'll likely be selecting virtual. All of these fields will be automatically filled in for you. And you can tell the journalist what you'd like them to discuss with you and your students. Once you click the send invitation button at the bottom, it's up to you and the journalist to coordinate the classroom connection with the students. So you'll likely get this set up via some kind of video conferencing solution. we're happy to help you with that. Just get in touch with us in the Help Center if you need a video conferencing solution to use with a journalist. We also have some supports for you in the resources section to go alongside the journalist tab. If you click Newsroom to Classroom on the left-hand menu, you'll see a classroom connection planning sheet. You can use this to collaborate with a journalist in real time to decide what subjects to focus on with the journalist. And you can download an overview of the Newsroom to Classroom program so that you can get some more context for how the program came to be and what the standards are for accepting a journalist into the program. So that is one of the many features that we think would work really well in a remote or a hybrid learning environment on Checkology. Again, you can access all the information that we talked about today in the Help Center here at checkology.zendesk.com. That is linked for you in your Checkology account. If you click your avatar on the top right, you can access that by clicking Help Center, or you can click the Help button on the bottom right, check out some ready-made resources here, and get to the Help Center again using that button on the left-hand side. All right, so now it is time for a Q&A. Let me check out the Q&A screen right now.
I got a couple for you right at the top of the list, Jordan.
Oh, excellent.
A couple people wanted to know, when students log in with single sign-on option, let's say they're using their Google school domain, does it pre-populate their usernames, or what does it do for that? Do you know what it does for their usernames when they use a single sign-on Google option?
I believe the username is essentially not created for the student in that moment. So the student's Google account becomes the way that they log in. So I believe they're not able to log in the old-fashioned way with a username and password, that they must click sign in with Google, and that's how they access Checkology.
Perfect. A couple other ones. What does the one credit being used? What does it mean because it uses the credit? All of that on the journalist one. And I know me, you, and Kim were talking about this just the other day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that question. So we're actually going to get rid of that text here soon, and we're going to get rid of those credits that you need to use currently in the journalist directory. So when we launched the journalist directory last year, we had a limitation that educators could invite 2 journalists per class to come speak to students. We put that in place because we weren't sure what the demands would be on journalist time. After about a year of having the journalist directory live, we see that limitations aren't really necessary, and that the conversations that are happening have been reacted to fantastically. So we're going to remove those limitations. For now, you can invite 2 journalists per class that you have set up to come speak to your students. But if you run out of credits, just contact us and we should be able to get something set up for you in the interim.
That's right. So that's going away. It does not cost, correct? You don't have to buy credits
Correct.
to speak with journalists.
Everything's free. Yeah.
No journalist will say, show me those credits. No.
Nope. Nothing like that. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, definitely. Kim, do you want to ask that next one?
How can a student find the pre-assessment link after they ignore it? So I think what this user is asking is about the settings to turn on and off pre-assessments. It might also be about pre-assessment data. So maybe we can start with the class settings and go over where to toggle on and off pre-assessments and post.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. Yeah, that's a great question. So the pre-assessment is by default on for every class. If you click edit next to your class and then open those advanced settings again, you can toggle it off. When it's on, every student, and I think what you saw on the screen earlier when I was logging into a student account was this, every student is prompted to take the pre-assessment, and it's hard-coded into the course. So when I logged into that student account, which I will do right now, I did dismiss a pop-up, but that pop-up was just a pop-up telling me about my username. I did not dismiss the pre-assessment because in order to do that, I've got to finish it. So in a student account, I click begin the survey. I answer these 20 short questions, and then the entire rest of the course becomes open to me, depending on whether the course lock is on. Since it's off, I've got a start button next to everything here in my course sequence. So that's what happens when the pre-assessment is turned on. If in your class settings you turn it off, then the student is just prompted to to start with the very first lesson in their course sequence. I also wanted to take this opportunity to go over where you can view student pre-assessment results, like Kim said. So once your students start taking the pre-assessment, click the More button on the top right of your teacher account, and then click Pre-Post Assessment. And all of their data is going to be saving for you in this area. So this is the information that if you have an administrator at your school or district who is a part of Checkology, they'll have access to this information in aggregate. They won't be able to see student names, for example, here. They'll be able to see in general how students are doing at your school or in your district. You can see only pre-assessment results by clicking this pre-assessment on the left-hand side. Post-assessment questions are asked at the end of lessons that have post-assessment questions assigned to them. So there are a couple of lessons that aren't tracking these learning gains, but most of them are. And at the end of the lesson, students will answer the question and submit the entire lesson. And then that turns up on this matched data page.
So we have a question related to pre-post assessments. Can we see what those pre or post assessments ask? And are there different levels for these and for content? I have grades 5 through 8 students.
Thank you. All these questions are right on point because they're the updates that we want to be making to the platform. So currently there's not a one-click solution to seeing what exactly the questions are that students are answering. But if you click your resources tab, and then you click teacher materials, when you scroll down to the bottom, you can download a document with the pre-post assessment questions listed there. And I believe the correct answers are highlighted in that document. We didn't want to make this available outside of a teacher account on Checkology to prevent students from Googling what the correct answers are and just answering that way. And the second part of the question was whether or not there are different versions. That's something that is also on our list in addition to making these questions more easily visible for educators. We would like to have a simplified version that gets automatically served to younger students and the version that we currently have being automatically served to older students. But currently there's just one pre-assessment for all students on the platform. I see a couple more in the Q&A, but let me see if I can open it. It's not opening on my end.
Well, that's okay. I got you covered. So one was that question that Kim just asked about the pre and the post. The other one is about, I see there's points associated in the student view with the assessments. Do people set up classes where kids have to earn a certain number of points or something? So can you talk a little bit about assessment? I know we have, a lot of formative assessment. We do have a pre and a post, but what about those points? What do people do with those?
Totally. So there is an excellent resource that Kim compiled in the Help Center. Sorry, one moment. I'm just going to open that again from within my teacher account. It is here under reviewing assignments. There's an article called Understanding Points in Checkology. And this talks about how and why points are assigned to different types of assessments within a lesson. So essentially each lesson is worth the number of points that correspond to the assessments within it. So a quick assessment is usually worth 10 points. A more complex one is worth 25 points, like a short answer. And something like a student upload or a full answer is worth 50 points. So for example, you see 450 points next to the First Amendment, and that's because there are quite a few assessments within the First Amendment. Beyond a lesson being worth a certain number of points, there's not a way to necessarily require students to complete a certain number of points. There's not a way to change the number of points that something is worth for students or anything like that. Up to this point, we have seen that some educators will take a look at whether or not their students completed the lesson and kind of translate that into their own grading system. But we are looking at some ways of making the point system a little bit more nimble for educators on Checkology. Was there a second part to that question that I missed, Shaylin?
Nope, they just wondered exactly what you said. What are the points for, and also how do people use them? So you gave some ideas, and that was in the Help Center, correct? That article again?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we're coming to the end of our time soon. We do feel free to put some questions if you have any more questions. for Jordan, Kim, myself, in either the Q&A or in the chat over on the side, if we can answer any further questions.
I'm going to take a moment to update that Notion website that I posted in the chat box at the beginning, so that I'll have all the links. I'm going to go ahead and add that understanding points link in there, and add in how to customize courses.
Awesome, thank you, Kim. And in that document that you're sending out, there's also a link to this part of the Help Center, which goes over a lot of what we talked about today, some settings and some features that you can use to optimize Checkology in a remote or hybrid model.
Another question, Jordan, and Kim, maybe this would be on your radar as well. Looking for suggestions around using Checkology with Microsoft Teams. It seems glitchy. There's a glitchy presence.
Interesting. What I would presume the Microsoft Teams usage would be posting links from Checkology into Teams for students to use. If that's not the case, whoever submitted that question, if you could put a little bit more context in the chat box, that would be awesome. One thing that we've seen is that folks who are using a learning management system outside of Checkology, they tend to not have a super straightforward way to say, this is your next lesson that's coming right up. So what we recommend is that educators simply communicate to students. Step 1, log into Checkology. Step 2, scroll to lesson number 2 and lesson number 3, or you can say the title of the lesson to give them verbal instruction on where to go next. Another update that's on our list for this year is having some kind of way for educators to push content or assignments to their students so that students will automatically know as soon as they log in exactly what they should be working on.
Great. So another question, can you link directly to assignments? And Matt, I'm sure you just heard Jordan talking about that, so that is definitely something that we are aware of we want to do. And so currently, no, you can't deep link into an assignment directly. So that is coming up, though. It is on the radar. Another question, Jordan, and Matt just said, never mind, he just answered, is I'm working with teachers to develop a lesson on filter bubbles and the consequences of them. Do you have resources on Checkology you'd recommend?
Oh, awesome. Thanks for doing that work. That's a really interesting question. The lessons that I would recommend off the top of my head to talk about filter bubbles would be the lesson Introduction to Algorithms. I'll open it up here in the content tab. So in this lesson, students interact with a mock social media site and they see what their phone essentially would look like before personalization and after personalization. And I think that would be a great introduction to a conversation about what your internet landscape looks like when you're only exposed to basically certain types of information. Another lesson that I think could be super useful for talking about filter bubbles would be arguments and evidence and understanding bias. Understanding bias is a bit more advanced of a lesson, so that's one that you might want to preview and kind of pick and choose from before fully delving into. Kim and Shaylin, do you have any more suggestions for that?
No, not at the top of my head. I think you answered the one that I would have pointed to. Kim?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you covered a lot of the great ones that are related to that.
Cool, thank you. And you can find more information about those lessons in the lesson guides again.
So it was asked, are we going to share this webinar? We are recording it. We are going to do different things with some of the demoing, some of the answers. Not quite sure if we're going to send this out to share. If that is a special request, why don't you let us know, and we can update everyone. We definitely are going to meet each Thursday, the last Thursday of each month, I should say. Topic for next time, just so everyone's aware?
It is, and this is a good segue from Matt's question, it is how to determine what type of content to assign to students. So where to find information about lessons, how to go about building your course, etc.
Perfect. And the last question will end with Matt's. And if we did not answer your question, remember, you can always drop your question, your email in the chat, and we will reply to you. You would have to have the course order set to off for them to scroll through the different assignments, correct?
So they're always able to scroll through the different assignments. This is the teacher account, but this is a lot. This looks a lot like what a student account looks like. Regardless of whether the course lock is off, they can still click up next. But they're just, if the course lock was on, there just wouldn't be a start button here next to this lesson until the student had completed the previous lesson, number 3.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm going to give a shout out wave here. Jordan, Kim, any final words to our group?
If you have any oh, sorry, I was just going to plug our Zendesk Help Center. If you have any lingering questions from today and you'd like to have a chat with me or start a message or phone call, checkology.zendesk.com. Checkology.zendesk.com. And thank you all for coming today.
Yep, and thank you for teaching news literacy and choosing Checkology. We're honored that you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day.